What is up, St. Matthew KC? Look, I'm so excited for tonight. Y'all, we have been having an amazing young adult week all week long. We started with a word from on high on Sunday. On Wednesday, we were talking to the singles about the reward in waiting. On Thursday, yesterday, our first lady, Christina, taught us how to deal with parenting and also have some self-care. Listen, we've been getting words, we've been getting gems all week long, but tonight, I believe, some massive gems are gonna be dropped, because what are we talking about? We are talking about Black ownership and financial literacy. Man, like we said last night, we are so excited for our guests. We're so excited for our panelists. We're so excited for our facilitator, because listen, we are going to get those big gems about our money tonight. I really believe that, y'all. Listen, God is our source, but he allows our job and all that income to be a resource to do what we need to do here on earth, okay? So I know that the Lord wants us to be a good steward over our finances. And so we're going to learn some gems tonight. And for my young adult folks, we already talked about them payday loans that you probably, you got a little bit, you owe some people some money. All right. Also, Uncle Sam, people out here trying to get their money from you. But guess what? We're going to learn how to make that money work for us and us not working for it. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my boy Sam Bell, who will be our discussion facilitator for tonight. And he's going to introduce our panelists. So Sam, it's all you, bro.
Welcome. This is, like she said before, this is financial literacy and Black ownership. We have our two esteemed panelists, Mr. Chris Arrone, and we have Mrs. Christina Jenkins, aka the Wedding Diva, to drop these dimes, these knowledge, these gems, whatever the case may be. So our first topic we're going to talk about is the importance of Black ownership. We often see these memes on social media. You see start an LLC, then it's just like there's no in between. Even though you have an LLC, that don't mean you just own a name. You're not making no money, no product. So I'm gonna turn it over to our panelists. Y'all can just chime in. I'm gonna start with Mrs. Christina. Why is it so important to have Black ownership in our community?
Well, let's think about this in two different ways. If we look white counterparts, some of them, I don't want to say most of them, have in some capacity had something inherited to them, whether it be property or any type of business. So they already pretty much have a leg up. Now, I don't want to say that that's across the board, but if we're looking about differences, cultural differences, and where some of the disparities are, that's really what I had started to look into probably about 15 years ago. I'm like, why is the playing field so uneven? And if we even want to take it a step further, for Black women, it is very uneven. So I think that's part of it. And why it is so important for us is because we have the opportunity to have generational wealth. And if we think about the term generational wealth, I have one daughter, she's 10 years old. And I want to be able to pass something down to her that perhaps my parents weren't able, or my grandparents weren't able to pass down to me. So it's funny that you brought up, the LLCs, because I was going to bring up the stimulus checks that maybe some of our folk may have received. And if you think about the Gucci's and the Louis Vuittons, don't get me wrong, I like those things too. But if you were to get $500, $1,000, think about what you could do if you did a business and put that in an LLC. You might even have some change left. Brand yourself. That's why I put in there, AKA the Wedding Diva, because I took something that I enjoyed and I got onto social media and I branded myself. And then that way I was starting to establish a platform. So I kind of want to start it there just because you mentioned it, Sam. And that was like one of the things on the top of my list. So think about trying to at least even the playing field. Chris, what do you got? What you think?
So first of all, I like the double entendre and AKA the wedding diva. So shout out to you. And then thank you to all to everyone, the facilitators, Pastor. Thank you, Lady C. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Rebecca, for the invitation, and Christina, of course. Thank you for your contribution. I think you really nailed it when you talked about the generational wealth aspect. And you know, there is a large, gigantic gap between other groups and minorities, and I'll actually give you those stats. So Asian, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, they own in America their demographic, they own 61.4% of homes for their demographic. Hispanics own 51.4%. White non-Hispanics own 76%. And on the lowest number lies African Americans, and we only own 40.6% of homes. And that is one of the huge deficits that we have in our country and in our community. And we could talk about so many different things that held us back from equal housing opportunities and so forth and so on, even redlining and some of those things that still exist right now in 2021. What Christina said, what she alluded to is absolutely accurate. I think a lot of times we go towards like the flash. One of my friends, he says, you know, we go for like the IG or the highlight reel of life, but we're not actually living the reality of life. And the reality of life is you got stimulated and you use that stimulation to look a certain way, but you're still, and I mean this with all due respect, you're gonna hear me say this a lot, so let me get it out the way. I mean this respectfully, but you're still paying rent. And I think that there's a huge misconception about what a mortgage is versus rent. I won't get into it too much because I know we got a long way to go, but that generational wealth period, that generational wealth point is so accurate. We are missing out on so many opportunities by not being able to pass down literally the thing that you go to the most. You spend probably the second most amount of time in it, your home. And so I'll stop there because I will get passionate. We'll roll with this bad boy. And let me go ahead and let Sam facilitate like he's doing so well.
Right.
I do apologize. I got really excited. We have a third panelist, none other than our Dr. Pastor Charles Thurman Jr. And he's going to bring the aspect of our biblical, you know, finances, because it's good to have money, but you know, as the Bible says, that thieves don't store your stuff in heaven, because thieves will come in and steal it, and moths will, you know, come in and rust. You know the Bible verse. But our pastor's going to keep the biblical aspect of it. Go ahead, doctor.
Thank you, Sam. I thought you forgot all about your dear old pastor, but I want to thank you, Sam, for that. And I'm grateful for Chris and Christina, who's here with us on tonight. But the question was, why is ownership important? And I want to extend on that and say, it's not only important that we own something, but it's important that we own something of value, because we can own something and it's not worth anything. If we look at just the history, you know, of America, owning a home is the most secure way to gain, like as they said, wealth. And with that home and with the wealth that accrues, you know, we're able to put our kids in college, we're able to build wealth, we're able to maybe start our own business. But if we look at just the history of, again, African Americans, it's generally where, you know, African Americans haven't been in places of value. They may have owned homes, but they may have not owned homes of value. So it's important that now that we own something, but we own something of value, because it's a way to gain security. And I look at it, and I always look at things from a kingdom perspective. I see ownership and generating wealth not simply as a selfish, you know, task, but it can help the kingdom in helping those who don't have, supporting those who may not own homes. Or it's important that we look at it from a communal sense, that we can not only lift up ourselves, but lift up the whole community, you know, specifically, you know, as Black people, we help each other to be lifted up. So that's kind of, I see that from a biblical perspective.
That's awesome, because I feel like oftentimes as Black folks, when we make it, it's kind of like you pull the ladder from the next person behind, because we don't realize that somebody helped us when we needed laundry money when we were in college. We needed something to eat. We needed, one of the church mother to slip us a 20 so we get home because we have enough gas. Like if we're gonna keep it 100 or keep it a G, we always understand that somebody's always gonna help you throughout any stage of your life. Nobody goes in this life without help. Like you need help to get into this world, so you're gonna need help doing your walk. So the next question is, we're gonna start with Mr. Chris. How do we start the process for owning our own things? Because we often see, like I mentioned in the LLC thing earlier, like it kind of goes into the second question. That's the next question. But how can we get the process for like owning our own stuff? Like you mentioned, so y'all mentioned the value of stuff because we all have a lot of depreciating assets, meaning the nice car, the nice stuff, but we don't realize that the Hellcat is like so much money. You want the status, but as soon as you drop it a lot, boom.
Yeah, 100%. I think before I get into like the technical thing, let's tap into like the philosophical part of it. The first thing first is I think you have to not be afraid, right? And even biblically, spiritually, the Word of God says that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of a sound mind. Sound mind being self-control. Now that translates over into the actual financial part and the practical part. You Well, hold on, wait. Let's tap into the philosophy more. I think the only thing that really limits us, and is our imagination. It is fear, right? And in the late great words of Kobe Bryant, he said that fear is just your imagination running its course, right? And a lot of people, we are afraid of what we've never seen. So going into these generational curses, we haven't seen what ownership looks like. We haven't seen what, let alone owning one home, what owning multiple properties look like, or what owning a multifamily looks like. So we have to tap into something that we haven't seen. We have to step outside of fear. We have to go into our imagination and begin to visualize these things. And then if you have a vision, then you'll be able to implement it. So then the practical ways of implementing it to make your vision come true is you want to, one, work on your credit, right? Make sure you got good credit. And good credit, there's a misconception with housing. And we were talking before the live started. Shout out to you, Sam. Sam, he was talking about, he got it with the FHA loan. So FHA loan is a government assistance loan. And typically you can get that loan depending on where you are and circumstances if you have even like a 580 credit score. So you don't have to be in the 700s club. You don't have to be in the high 600s club. Depending on what lender you have, what circumstances you have surrounding your family situation, you can get a loan with a 580 credit score. And a lot of people don't know that. They think you have to have perfect credit. So first things first, work on your credit. Definitely work on your credit. Get with someone to hold you accountable. Get with a bank or a credit union. Preferably not one of the major banks. Go with someone local, like a credit union, versus one of the bigger banks, because they tend to be a little more flexible and they have better relationships because they are local and they cater to local. Then you will get a pre-approval. That'll give you an idea of what you need to do. A pre-approval is not a hard check. It's just an outline. It's like a frame, right? It's not that the big picture is not going to fit in there per se. It's just to make it look good. These are your parameters. Once you get your pre-approval, then understand what the down payment is, because then they'll tell you what you can afford. And another thing is, a lot of times we think that the first home has to be the final home. That is not the case. In many scenarios, you kind of play it in your mind like, oh, I want the 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom, swimming pool with the driveway. No, you don't. Not on the first one if that's not what you can afford. You want a 3-2 or a 3-1 with whatever you can afford, and that's going to hopefully appreciate. So it's stepping stones to it. Save up for your closing costs, save up for your down payment. If you do utilize the FHA loan, it's 3.5%. So whatever that amount is, whatever the house is. And again, get with the local mortgage lender. They can help you out with that. And I guess those are like some very introductory level things, not to be too advanced. And if we have other questions that need for me to elaborate, definitely willing to, but I don't want to overwhelm you. So again, work on your credit. If you want, get a pre-approval, because that'll tell you how much you can afford. It'll give you a range of how much you can afford, how much you need to save to put down. Don't overthink it. If you're paying rent 9 times out of 10, you can pay a mortgage. I guarantee that. That's my word as a professional realtor. This is what I do for a living.
580. Wow, I never knew that. I thought 5A. I never knew that. That's something I didn't know. But we're gonna go ahead and go to Pastor. Do you have any like how can we start the process of owning our own things from a biblical perspective?
Well, I think it's important that we first have a desire to own something. If we look at the history of even in Kansas City, there was redlining and they had restrictive racial covenants where they would restrict Black folks from living in certain areas and owning certain homes. So it goes back years that there is a fight for ownership. And because ownership, again, gives you a place, it gives you a say, gives you a place to be able to generate wealth. So at first, I think it's important that we as a people have a desire to own things because it sets us up for a better future for the rest of our generation. And then I also want to say, but for those who may not be in the space to own anything, it's important first that you have a place to live. That renting an apartment or home is okay. If that's all you have, is that all you can do right now? Rent. You can stay in that place and begin to generate some savings until you're in a space to be able to own. So that's very important. Your safety and security and physiological needs must be met first before we talk about ownership. So we don't want to put anybody down to say renting is a horrible thing. In that, but it can set you up to own your own home. I think that for me, casting vision. What do you want? What do you want? Me and my wife, before we were able to position to even rent a home, we started to cast. Me and my wife, we didn't have the best credit starting off, and we wanted to just rent a home. And I started to look at home. My wife's like, "Why are you looking at these homes, knowing that we are not meant to get up in here?" But I cast vision. I said, this is what I want. And this is what I'm going to, first of all, pray for and learn everything I can to get. And sure enough, through prayer, we was able to get the home that we looked at just for rent. And right now, me and my wife are now in the process of buying a home. And we've been casting vision. What do we want? Let's pray for it. Let's learn all we can about it. Let's connect with people like Chris and Christina to help us be better position ourselves to get the home, pray for it, have other people pray on it, and begin to save, and begin to put yourself in position to save all you can. If you need to put down the fork, that for that extra meal, put it down, put that extra money into savings. And that's what me and my wife have been doing. Everything that we extra we get, we try to put into savings. So I think that was some initial things I think that can help in when we begin to own some property.
Thank you, Pastor. Those phenomenal points you made, especially like having the vision, because sometimes, the Bible does say, as a man thinketh, so shall he be. So if you think you're going to still, not saying, you're going to still be in the same situation, but like when it comes to finance, it's like, okay, I'm going to say $20 here, I'm going to say $20 there. And by the time you look at your savings account, you got over $600 in there, and you could do anything you want to, as far as like going towards, fixing your credit or down payment, but nevertheless. So, Ms. Jenkins, what are your thoughts?
So I really agree with what both panelists, Chris and Pastor, have said. One other thing that I want to bring up is that we've been talking about the idea of fixing your credit. How about we start off in an area where our credit is already established and good? Not saying that that's par for the course, but I think that we have a responsibility to educate our youth. So if there are any young folk who are listening, do not just throw away your credit. Trust me, we know from experience that is second it and third it. I'm telling you, because it's easy to get that first credit card and to max it out and to be Gucci down to the socks. But let me tell you how that does not help you in the long run. And I know everybody is second and third and fourth one because we've had to learn maybe the hard way and rebound that way. But if we start thinking like other groups, like Chris just gave us some awesome stats about, hey, we're the minority in owning things, tangible things, like Pastor said. So if we start off with, we got a credit card for emergency purposes, and I'm saving money for if something were to happen. Think about if I don't go to Starbucks 3 times a week, maybe just one, how much money I would save on an annual basis. Also, we'll probably get into it, but we're talking about houses, we're talking about renting. Let's not get wrapped up in keeping up with the Joneses. I am still in my first home. I am 41 years old, and we are just now getting ready to move. And the equity that I have in my home now, if I could tell you to just hold on, just hold on. So I know that we'll get there. I fully agree with what Pastor and what Chris has said. So let's talk about the credit score. Let's talk about what it takes. Let's talk about maybe not eating out 3 or 4 times a week, maybe just twice, and how much money over an annual period we would save.
Sam, can I jump in before you go? I see you still on mute, so all right, thank you. So listen, Chris, you triggered it. I was gonna be cool, but listen, you are so right about that. Keep it up with the Jones thing. Yeah, that keep it up with the Jones thing is really like something that we have an issue with. There's a story in a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I'm gonna make it. I'm an urban dictionary. So there's a story about a guy who he wanted to, or his wife wanted to get a car, a high-end car, a luxury car. And he told her no. He's like, I'm not getting that car for you, but we'll buy an apartment complex. And then once we get the apartment complex, you can do whatever you want to do with the money that's going to pay your car payment, right? And I'm saying this because, Chris, you triggered my higher level thinking thing, right? And we don't always have to start from a position of down. And I was reading an article today or listening to a rapper, I can't remember, but they were talking about how we have to sell trauma as Black people. Like, we have to talk about how we started from the bottom, now we here. That's not always the case. And that's the purpose of these seminars. These seminars are to help people to not make the mistakes that many of us have made. And when you really listen to what's going on, we're all telling you the same thing. We trailblazers for y'all. Y'all don't got to experience it because we did it for you. So that equity thing, I can't wait to get to that piece of the conversation because I got some crazy stories that's happening right now in my area in Florida. And I'm telling you, when y'all hear these stories, I really hope that it causes a shift in our mindsets for what we can do with finances when we learn how to do something. This is my last point. Sam, unmute, bro, because I'm about to get this back to you. Here's my last point. Okay, here it is right here. We as African Americans especially, we know how to do a lot with a little bit, but we do not know how to do a lot with a lot. When we have a little bit, when we gotta live check to check, oh, we make it work. I'm talking about we got $50 on Wednesday with 3 kids and no gas. We just gotta get till Friday. We will make it work. But when we got 500 in our account, when we got 5,000 in our account, when we got we working with some stimulation, we just kind of blow through that money. So we know how to do a lot with a little bit. But when can we get to the point as a kingdom where we benefit the kingdom of God because we know how to do a lot with a lot? All right, I'm muting. Go.
Not only that, what would happen if we pull our resources together like other groups? Oh, so that's a bigger idea, something that we need to start talking about instead of, oh, well, he or her, she got this or he got that. What about if we join together? So I'm going to mute myself too.
See, that's why I knew they got you here because y'all was about to go back and forth like LeBron doing the alley-oop to D-Wade. So we got these gems, we got this stuff, and like y'all did mention some biggest things. I think to chime in what you said. Why can we join together? I think for our community, we have to stop the hating, the jealousy, the malice towards each other. Because if you look at it, this is no disrespect to any community out there. But the Asian community, they all live together. Literally all live together. Somebody sleep on the couch, somebody sleep in the other room, have enough room, and they build equity till they buy all these apartment complexes and stuff like that. So that's the main thing. We got to stop, thinking that we trying to one up somebody because that's the crabs in the barrel mentality. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that's hindering our community. Think that we need to one up somebody or keep with the Joneses. One more thing. Dave Ramsey said the best. He said, don't keep up with the Joneses because they broke. They literally broke. They don't got no money. They got so much debt. It's just like they make my student loan debt look like small. So, anyways, okay. So next question will be, it kind of, how can we use our own talents and abilities to like create extra income? And it kind of goes back to ownership. Like, if I got somebody who could braid hair real good, how can I use that extra money to establish my own business or use my own talents and ability to do so? We can start with you, Miss Christina, because I understand you have a wedding company. So talk about that for us.
Yeah, so I just took something that I was passionate about, something that interests me, and I made it a separate business. So we didn't do formal introductions, but I've been with the Federal Reserve Bank for 16 years now, and I love my job. So there's no, okay, I'm going to be a full-time entrepreneur. That was not my claim to fame. My husband had been in the casino industry for 18 years, and he just recently started to become an entrepreneur full-time. But I really took something that I was passionate about. I basically coined myself the wedding diva, and I started to gain business that way. Now, let me say this, because when I started out, I didn't have very much experience. So I had to get up to the point that I am at now. And I think that folks need to realize that there is an entry level point to a lot of businesses, and especially when you're working for yourself. One of the misconceptions is that, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I know business. I know this. I know that. You work more hours working for yourself than you do clocking in at a 9 to 5. So I'm not going to say anything. I have a 9 to 5 and I also am an entrepreneur, but I think the first part is being passionate, because that was what continued for my drive to say, I really love coordinating weddings. And then from there, it opened up a plethora of other ventures that I ended up going down. So to me, it was holding the interest of the business. Because I'm not I can cook for my family, but that's not what I'm passionate about. So I'm not going to go open a restaurant. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Brother Sam, we got a couple hands raised.
All right, sorry about that. So
They
I'm a
have
questions. All right, we got some questions here. Okay. Who's the first question?
Miss Arian, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, hi everyone. I have a question specifically for Christina. And I guess more so not a question, but a comment, and just for you to expound. So you mentioned that, you're working for yourself and it takes passion. Can you explain to all of us like what that process looks like when things are not always going well? Because going back to what Sam was saying, you know, on social media, you see, oh, LLC, congrats, and that's all great, and I'm happy for everyone who at least starts, because you have to start somewhere. But that process of when you're down and to have the stamina and the resilience to keep going, what does that look like? What has that looked like in your process with your wedding business?
So for me, when I was down and out, maybe it was inexperienced or maybe it was lessons learned. It came from the passion of wanting to do wedding coordination. And again, this was just one of the businesses that I felt like it was self-sustaining, wanted to continue to do, because I did have clients that I were serving, but maybe at some point, maybe I didn't like the outcome that happened of a particular event, or maybe I got too busy. So I will be quite candid. I am a wife, I am a mother, and when you coordinate weddings or events, that consumes you. If you are married or you coordinated any huge event, you basically have to choose on which life you want to go into. And so it was hard at times. But again, I think it goes back to that passion, because if I just look at the money aspect, I can take the money and I can save it and do, maybe create other business ventures. But that's not all of what it was for my wedding business. It was really the drive to want to be the wedding coordinator and to be the wedding diva and to live up to the name of the wedding diva KC. So I think it all goes back to your passion and your purpose, and that's when you really start. The LLC is just the paperwork part of the business. What is and that's where you have to really dig deep of what's your passion. You know, people ask you when you're in school, what do you want to be when you grow up? But what are you really passionate about? Like, I have a career at the Federal Reserve, but what was it at the end of the day that I was passionate about that kept me continuously going, even when I didn't like what things looked like?
Can I chime in on that, Sam? I think purpose should come before finances. You know, I think mission should come before money, you know, because it's going to be your purpose that's going to drive you to keep going when it's difficult. For me, I'm grateful that the church, you know, pays me enough to be able to support my family, but I have a second job. And that is, you know, a director at a seminary, which also provides me the opportunity to be adjunct as well. I think God has graced everybody with talents and gifts and the purpose. Is how can you use those to benefit others first? And I think if that's your goal, that your desire is for the kingdom first and to benefit others, then money will always come. It will always follow your passion and your purpose. So it's good to evaluate yourself. What are you passionate about? What do you love to do? Would you do it for free? And I think having that mentality, my goal is to help others. My goal is to do for the kingdom, and the money always comes.
We have a couple comments on Facebook Live, and Reverend Judith Neville says, make it your goal to live a quiet life, minding your own business and working with your hands, just as we instructed you. And that comes from First Thessalonians 4:11. And so she was talking about how that was one of the things that God really spoke to her about, as far as, you know, that keeping up with the Joneses mentality is that, you know, mind your own business, mind what you got going on over here. Don't be worried about what's people going on the left and the right. And then also another thing, another person said is that, yes, your passion makes the work worthwhile, and it makes you work.
Those are all phenomenal points. Just understanding that your passion to carry you through, because sometimes as an entrepreneur, I'm pretty sure some of y'all could contest. It's like when it's you're not making that much money, you make it working all these hours, just like, you know, is it even worth it? Because in any type of business, you always take the level of risk, and some people like to take the risks. Other people just like hit the 9 to 5, and both of them are okay. You could do both. Prime example, Miss Jenkins, and it's just like sometimes I think we get caught up with saying that, you know, I have to pick one or the other, but you know, you can always do both. So we're gonna kind of switch gears a little bit. We're gonna talk about financial literacy, and we have a Bible verse associated with it, which is Luke 28:30, which talks about, you know, just kind of paraphrasing a little bit. So basically, you could build, like, you trying to build this magnificent house, since we have two realtors, and you don't have enough money to finish a project. So now you just got a frame on the house. You just got the you just got the base on the house, and like people gonna look at you like they're gonna laugh at you, like, how come they count the costs? So going back to your money, going back to your pockets, going back to your change, your coin, wherever the case may be, why is it so important that we understand the basis of financial literacy in our community? We can start with you, Chris.
Well, so you say why is it important to understand the basis of financial literacy, right? Ask me that question in a different way. Less syllable words. Less multi-syllable words.
Why is it important to have an understanding of financial literacy?
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks. So I think it's important to understand the basis. Essentially, like you said, it's the foundation. So let's say you go into purchasing a home that is bigger than your budget, right? So you can't actually afford the home, but it's one of those things where you like it, you love it, you can afford the down payment, but then you're not in a field that's necessarily that has upward mobility. So you're making the same amount of money and you find the bills continuing to get big. So here's a really good and live example. Someone buys a 3,500 square feet house, coming from a 2,000 square feet house. So that's about maybe 3 or 4 more bedrooms, right? Let's kind of equate it that way. Now, those 3 or 4 more bedrooms come with 3 or 4 times the heat, AC, or some sort of utilities, and now they can't afford it. Just because you see something that's big doesn't mean you have to immediately jump on it. Again, like Christina said, she's in her first home. She stayed in that home and let that home build in equity, and now she'll be able to transfer the equity, or she'll be able to utilize it in any way that she chooses to. So if you don't understand, and it also goes back to what Pastor was saying, if you don't have a vision, then you're going to be scattered. You're going to blow with the wind. So understanding financial literacy is equivalent to having a vision. Once you have a vision, you kind of work backwards. You see what the end goal is, and then you go right back to the very beginning. Then you go one by one, you go step 1, step 2, step 3, all the way to get to the 10th step. A lot of times we focus on the byproduct, and the byproduct is nothing but a result of everything you do during the process. So if you are trying to, metaphorically speaking, if you're trying to lose weight, the byproduct is your workout plan that equates to you either losing, or in my case, trying to gain weight, right? So financial literacy, understanding what credit is, understanding what discipline is, understanding savings accounts, checkings accounts, understanding what budgeting does, understanding what giving yourself an allowance does. With dual income, is one person paying the bill, the other person saving. Understanding those different things, that's essential to get you to where you want to be for your end all goal. Hopefully that answered the question.
Pastor, would you like to elaborate? You did ask the question. Thank you, brother.
I think financial literacy is important because it's for me, financial literacy is money management. It helps you learn how to manage your money, as well as help others manage their money. I think one important thing we can learn financial literacy very easy is from our parents. For me, I hear a lot of colleagues and young adult friends that parents didn't really talk about financial literacy. So we're just learning as we go. And I think some of the advantages of other cultures, other races, is that financial literacy is taught generation from generation. Therefore, the next generation can do better. I think it's up to us, I guess, as this is a young adult week, to stop it where it is and begin to teach our children, teach people in our community about financial literacy when it comes to the credit, savings, so on and so forth, so that we can better set ourselves up for the next generation.
All right, thank you. Just for the sake of time, we're just gonna go ahead to the next question. Could you talk about, Ms. Christina? Would you please talk about the basis of creating a budget? Because you can't really do nothing if you don't know what you have and what you need.
Yep. So I think creating a budget, and I know we're moving on, and I'm going to try to talk about both. So for me, my very first job at 16 was in the commercial bank. So I was a bank teller. So it was very educational for me to know about how to manage money. And I don't want to throw my husband under the bus, and hopefully he won't throw anything at me. But when I met my husband, he only dealt with cash. It was like, he worked a job, and here I am, this experienced banker. And I'm like, what are you doing with all of this cash? Like really, what are you doing with all of this cash? You have a legit job to where you shouldn't have to run around with a lot of cash in your hand. And that was when I educated him about, products that you could get over the counter at a brick and mortar bank. And now he could probably tell me about more products that are in the commercial bank than what I can, since I've been at the Federal Reserve. So it's important to plant that seed in what you've been exposed to as far as what you know about money. The great thing is that we have so many more resources now that tells you about banking, not only credit, but how to manage your money. And so if we think about what tools we have, there are probably, and Chris can probably, as I'm talking, look it up and see how many apps we have either on the iOS or Android on the type of products that we can download to simply put in a budget. You're not going to write out a budget. You're going to put in your actual totals into an app, and it's going to tell you how much you can afford. And if we take it a step further and you take out again that Starbucks, and I'm intentionally saying Starbucks because that's one of my things that I like to do is always go to Starbucks, but just cutting those things out and putting that into savings, and then taking it a step further. So if you have money in a savings account, maybe you take that money and put it into a CD. Now I know CDs aren't really high yielding, but at least you won't be able to touch it, and it won't be as, tempting to touch that money. But establishing a realistic budget, it's easy to sit down on paper to put the numbers down, and then when you get to the end of the month, maybe you haven't met your goal in what you have down on that budget. But use the app. Chris, did you look? Did you get one for me? I didn't want to be on my phone and talk.
So there are, you said how many are there? There are over 3,000.
Thank you. Yeah.
So yeah, there we are.
Yep. So I don't have necessarily a recommendation right now, but we all use our phones. We all use our phones, and that's an easy way to put in what your amount is. Also, let me just kind of segue away. If you are working a 9-to-5 and maybe you have a thrift or some type of savings at that particular employer, you can sometimes put money away without you even touching it. And then that's another way to save money. I will say in the very beginning, I like nice things and I like to, consume a lot. So that was the first way that I was able to just put it away. It was out of sight and out of mind. And then I was able to save even more than what I was initially saving.
We have a comment from our own Miss Cynthia Jenkins. Despite the fact that our parents may not have been financially literate enough to pass on, Christina said, use the available resources to learn along with your children as you are teaching them. So as parents, if you're learning with them, go along with the lesson with them also. Okay, so we're going to move on. No, I know we kind of looking at sake of time. I know we got a couple more. So say that we have, we got the savings and all the stuff. And so how do we begin to, invest our savings into different ventures, like have our money make money for us? Like, I don't know if y'all been watching, but the GameStop stock just shot up. I think it was last time I checked, it was like $348 a share. And it shot up because people were using their money to invest, but that's a different story. But Chris, you want to talk about that? Since I saw a head nod over there, you was watching that.
Yeah. So yesterday, my friend made $16,000 in stocks. Just yesterday, he called me. He called me around, I want to say 11 o'clock, and the app. It's a cryptocurrency called Doge. Hold on, wait. Stop downloading it right now. Stop downloading stuff, y'all. Wait. Before you go downloading stuff and spending your money, I am not a financial advisor. Let me start with that legally, keep everybody protected. And then two, just because he did it don't mean you about to do it right now. He did it yesterday, okay? So forgetting those things that are behind us. Now with that being said, let me tell y'all the story, and then as we proceed. All right, so he made $16,000 yesterday. He put $500 into a cryptocurrency that was 0.003% back in December. And yesterday, out of nowhere, it spikes out of nowhere. And so by the time he called me around, I want to say it was around 11 o'clock last night. He's like, man, I made $11,000 like off this cryptocurrency. So I'm doing what I just told y'all not to do, because I learned some stuff. So I'm like downloading the app and I'm trying to go in and drop my little pennies in there. I'm like, you made 11,000. He's like, oh man, it's 12,000 now. And I'm like, Lord, please let the Wi-Fi work. Like, hear me, God. And then it's like 12,000. And I'm not kidding y'all. 13,000. It's about 11:45, 14,000. I'm like, over here going crazy. It's not working. He's like, Chris, you got it. So by the time we hung up, about an hour and 15 minutes later, the stock had hit the peak, and he made $16,000. And his discipline was so cool because he didn't freak out. He didn't pull out. He left it in there so he can continue to make money. And God bless him, because I'm snatching my dough, right? So Christina says, and Miss Cynthia, they said something that's essential, and even Pastor, just learn, okay? And when I finally got my stuff down, like he said, just chill. He said, do something that you care about. Invest in stocks that you're actually going to pay attention to, because that's how you're going to make your money. I'll go ahead and tell the finance, just because I'm in real estate. I'll tell the equity story now, if that's okay. So there's a guy who was going to spend, he's looking for a condo to rent for his brother. And so he was going to spend he was going to spend $85,000, but let's say $100,000 to make it easy. He's going to spend $100,000 to purchase this condo cash. Now, right now, if you know anything about the interest rates, they're extremely low. So what that means is if you want to borrow money, you can borrow money way cheaper right now than you could, let's say a year ago, or that you may be able to in a year from now. So I say, okay, well, let's think about this. You could borrow money. You could get this place as an investment property, put 25% down, which is $25,000, and then you can get 4 of these units, or you can even just do 2 and just kind of kick back. Put 25% down, that's $50,000. You'll keep $50,000 in your pocket, and then you can rent both of these places versus buying one for cash and renting, just the one. So that's an example of kind of thinking big and not always using cash like Christina's husband was doing back in the day. And thank God for the help me. And then there's another aspect to it where when you own a home, it over time, that home, it appreciates in value. So that means that it goes up. The number that you purchased the home for, and sometime it's worth more in the future than it was when you currently purchased it. So there's this option to refinance. And if you refinance, you essentially reset your loan, but you get whatever the equity is. So whatever the positive number between what you had to pay for the house and what it would appraise for, or what they would check it to see how much it's worth, just trying to make sure the terms are not over our heads, then they will give you that money, basically cash in your pocket, okay? So one of the people that one of my lenders is working with, their home is appraising for over $100,000. Right? Somebody say, thank you, gentrification. No. So it's appraising for over $100,000. And what they're doing is they're taking a portion of the 100,000, it's actually a little bit more than that, but they're taking that portion and then they're going to go and they're going to put it into an investment property. So then it's going to yield another residual income for them. So those are just some of the different things you can do with finances. I hope that I kind of answered the question. If you do want to tap into stocks to learn about it, that's on you. Robinhood is an amazing app that's made it very, very, very easy for people to learn what stock exchange looks like. And I think that's my segment on it. Hopefully I answered the question.
Yeah, you did ask the question. I do appreciate it. So just for the second time, we're just going to open it up for questions. So if you got any questions in Facebook land, the panel, people on Zoom, you could chime in and ask any of the panelists for some questions.
Sam, I did have a question as well as a comment that I kind of wanted to hear from Chris and Christina on. You kind of skipped it and talked about the credit score, how important that is. And I think that's a really important thing that we have to talk about, because I think that sometimes the credit score can be used to perpetuate, racial injustice, because that one number determines whether you get a job, whether you get a home, whether you get an apartment. That number determines your whole life, whether you are good with paying your bills or not. That one number can truly stop you. So I think some legislation, something has to be done, first of all, to open up the space or new avenues for people who may have low credit, but may have money or intend to make payments, can get something of value, again, because that number can be used to put people in high interest loans, predatory loans, where then it puts them in a more delinquent space. So something has to be done, first of all, just at the base of it. But for those who are maybe just starting out or maybe thinking about doing some things in your life, credit score is important. It's good to begin to monitor your credit score as soon as you can, and to keep it up. And keep up on it. But I do want to hear from Chris and Christina, and what's your thoughts on the importance of credit score and how that has effects in home buying, and any advice you have for raising credit scores, so on and so forth.
Christina, you got it first.
Yep. So absolutely. So I'm going to go back to, because we live in a telephony world where we have these cell phones at our fingertips. Even when we wake up in the middle of the night, we may check our phones. So I would say the three major credit reporting bureaus, they have apps. You can log in and stay logged into that app and monitor your credit score. I am a big advocate for that because of, one, you stay on top of it, because there are dishonest people out there who like to steal folks' identity. So that will keep an eye on it. Also, you will know your position. So the number is important, Pastor, first and foremost, but also the history that is within that report. That is also important. One thing that I would say to, if you don't take anything else out of this, don't close out credit cards, try to pay them down. That is going to negatively impact your score. We just think, oh, we'll go ahead and close it out and then that'll take care of it. That harms you more than trying to over time pay it down. What I like to do personally, there's several credit repair places that are out there, but personally, if you target a card or a debt that you have the least amount of liability with and try to pay that down, that will kind of free up for you to be able to pay down other debt. So look at things across the board, monitor your credit report. If you don't pull your credit report, you can go to freeannualcreditreport.com. Get a free credit report once a year, and you can keep your eyes on it without any type of memberships or any commitments to make sure that your credit report is accurate and that you are on top of your debt. And then that way you can create your budget and you can start to pay down debt. So I absolutely agree with you, Pastor, as far as the number, but also think of the number and the history. So they're also looking at the longevity of an account that you've had. You know, are you just getting credit cards and then just, you know, closing them? How is it that you're managing it? And it's going to stay with you for a while. So I'll shut up and let Chris have an opportunity.
No, you did phenomenal. I don't really need to add a lot more to that because I really think you said everything. I'm going to answer the question, Pastor, from a different angle because what you said was something that it's funny because Rebecca and I, we were talking about this and I was trying to incorporate it, but I was like, I want to reach. so it's very important for us to understand our local officials. And so this is a segment about voting. Voting actually can really, really, really help you when it comes to making sure we do have equality, because even in 2020, Blacks were denied mortgages at a rate of 80% higher than white applicants, right? More fun facts. So it's important for us to make sure just politically, we're putting the right people as city councilmen, mayors, councilors, congressmen, senators, those different things, believe it or not, it will have an amazing impact on how you're either given a loan or where it's suggested you move. So those are things that are very important in addition to literally everything that Christina said.
Yeah, and just 2 cents, just because we were talking about it. When you do get your home mortgage, or maybe you got a credit card or whatever it is that you have, read your documents, go through it. I know it may seem like you're flipping through and you're signing, but that's a part of the literacy that we were talking about earlier, is that you don't want to sign your life away and then you have a mortgage payment that in 5 years you're not going to be able to afford. So that's important no matter what type of banking product we're talking about. If we're talking about Robinhood stock, if we're talking about anything financial, know what it is that you're signing, know the document.
They always say the devil's in the details, so definitely always remember those details, because I know I read an article saying that if you get like a mortgage and based on is a variable and fixed, based on the market, your mortgage go up or down based on what your interest rate was when you initially signed the mortgage. So yeah.
Financial suicide, that's what that is.
Okay. And so like we are allowed to go over time a little bit. So I guess the most two things you already talked about, why it's important to create a budget and how we get out of debt. And like I guess the debt question kind of goes to how can Black folks get out the struggle living for paycheck to paycheck. So how can we as a people, definitely get up, get out the struggle from living paycheck to paycheck? Because say that we hear all these beautiful things from our panelists, and we want to do that, but how can we implemented, because it's like, okay, they saying all those things, but my paycheck's still 600, 600 after taxes is 505, and that's every 2 weeks. So how can I, begin to do these things if I'm like living from, ends meet to literally from next week to next week?
So, Chris, did you want to go?
You got it. I'll follow up.
Okay. So one of the things that I said earlier on, I talked about the Starbucks, or I talked about the going out and eating. I think sometimes we have that YOLO mentality, like, hey, you can't take it with you. So 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to have the capacity where you need it. So where you can take those extra steps and maybe eliminate things that you do on a daily basis, it may mean that maybe you pick up another trade or another job. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that to stay ahead of the curve. If you think about some of our grandmothers, our parents, they may have worked more than one job. And if just one job isn't cutting it to where you cannot pull in that revenue, I would say there is nothing wrong with getting another stream of income. And again, even for me, I took something that I enjoyed doing and I made that into another business, and I wanted to make more money and add to our bottom line. So that would be the advice for me. If you're doing that budget and there's just simply nothing there at the end after you pay bills, maybe if you can't cut back, maybe there's another stream of income that you can look towards obtaining.
Again, I think you nailed it. If you can't create income, you have to eliminate outgoing. You have to cut your expenses. So if you are, but really another thing you said, as far as the different jobs and things like that, I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves the credit we deserve for being the creative people we are. And a lot of times we try to work hard versus working smart. And I do understand it seems like you're stuck between how, if I take this risk, then I can't pay my bills. Yet look at the other opportunities that are around you that are kind of creating outlets. So, we always talk about tax season. Folk got kids, and these are different things that if you budget accordingly, it could be a jump start to your next level. So I just wanted to say something a little different, but again, Christina, I think you nailed it.
Yeah. And if we look across like what we've been kind of talking about, comparing the Black community to others, again, I think, Sam, you mentioned it, to where the Asian community pretty much lives together and they're able to pair their income together, or pull their income together in order to operate as one. So maybe you have to go and live home for a little bit in order for you to make some adjustments to make more money. There's nothing wrong with that. So maybe we need to, think a little bit outside of the box, and just instead of saying, oh, well, this is all that I make and I can't budget anything else.
I want to jump on that. That was great. I'm happy that both of y'all said that, because there are some cultures where the person, regardless of what their status is, they live with their parents, and when they move out, like when they get married, the gift to the child is the parents buy them. They have literally purchased them a home. So. Yep. There, like you said, and even if it's not necessarily moving back with your parents or such and such, if you just downsize, if you go from, if you're renting and, you're paying an extra $300 for a guest bedroom, hey, I'm sorry, for this year, we ain't gonna have no guests. Or if you gonna stay here, you're gonna have to sleep on the couch. It's nothing wrong with that, because you have goals, and trying to be, trying to live a highlight reel, that gets expensive, and it's okay for you to downsize. It doesn't mean that you're less of anything. It means you're more disciplined, and your reward is going to be more because you respect the process and you're not so focused on the byproduct.
Yeah, Chris, and if we go and tie it all the way back to the very beginning when we talked about passing down wealth. So you're making the sacrifices now, but just like I said, any of your children will be able to have some of that leg up, like we said, that some other cultures already have. Maybe they have that building in order to run a business. Maybe they already have housing in order to work with. So if we think about that, think about generational wealth, we're making the sacrifice, but think about our children and how we're passing that down. And that is your legacy.
Absolutely. Off the glass, back to me. And I got this one, Chris. There's even this thing that one of my friends is doing, and you triggered it when you talked about passing it down to your children. He just bought some tires. Now I know that this is like it might sound counterproductive, but he just bought some tires offline, and so they did the Facebook market thing. So he gets the tires, and he's like, man, that was a pretty good experience. So then he sold his tires off the same market. Then they started collecting stuff in the house. Like, hey, he told his sons, would you rather spend 5 hours playing PlayStation, or do you want me to sell it? And then we can get you the new one when it come out, but you can keep the money though. And his son was like, man, I'll take $250. So they sold the Xbox. And now they're literally going around the house, finding shoes, finding clothes, and they starting to sell the stuff in their house. And it's giving them like so much more money than they expected, because the stuff is literally just sitting there. So, again, we talk about downsizing. It don't have to be the dramatic, I'm sending my car back to the dealership, I'm moving out of my house. You can do downsizing by getting rid of the stuff in your closet, getting rid of the stuff that's underneath that cabinet that you're not using no more. And you can see a yield by doing stuff like that.
Yeah, I think they call that. I think I read an article on eBay. It said every 10 seconds a shoe is sold on eBay. So like you could take your stuff around the house, put on eBay, Facebook Marketplace. I think it's called retail arbitrage. It's what's called. A person made $1 million off that a couple years ago by just going through Walmart, going to the section where they markdown section. He was buying old stuff and is just selling the double online. So that's a gem, y'all can take. So we're kind of, I want to leave the last part of our panel for questions. So if you got any questions for our esteemed panelists, you could do so now. You can raise your hand on Zoom, and if you're on Facebook land, you can just type it in the chat.
I saw Miss Cynthia Smith's hand first.
Well, good evening, young people. I am so glad you all decided to have this forum. I am not a young adult. I am a seasoned adult. But I want to say to Chris and Christina, the counsel that you all have given has been wonderful. Now, I just would admonish these young adults to please take heed and embrace the information and then move forward on it. Now, I wanted to just make a point is that when you said about generational wealth and passing down, sometimes when parents pass down, say for instance, they have a home that has been, that they own. Well, as young folks, we don't want those homes. It's not the most aesthetically, pleasant place. But if you put just a little TLC, that's what I call it, into a home, you can make it what you want until you get to a point, like you said, Christina, you stayed in your home, your first home, until you were able to build up equity. Well, those homes that are owned by parents, it may not be in the best neighborhood, or it may be, regardless of what it is, sometimes starting at ground zero and building from that, as opposed to starting at ground negative and building from that. I like what you said about those credit cards, because companies love college students, and they'll give credit cards for days. So by the time you get out of college, you done maxed out all those credit cards, and you have not only your school loans, you also have all of that. Hey, I know I'm speaking from experience. I went to college and I had all the credit cards all in my name. And when I got out, I couldn't buy nothing. All I could do was pay back my debts. So I'm just saying, I'm admonishing you all as young adults. Don't wait until I will be 70 in March. Do not wait until my age to try to get it right. Get it right now, because and one thing I used to always say to young people, see, as young folks, you think you got plenty of time. You don't need to rush right now. You got time to do this and time to do. The time is now. Had I known back then when I was in my 20s what I know now, I could have had a whole lot more money to leave to my children. But that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter. Even if you start off with $5 a paycheck, you'll be surprised how much that can accumulate over time. So I thank you all for sharing with you your experiences and the information. And thank you, Pastor and Rebecca and Sam, for you all. I think this has been very informative.
Thank you,
Just one-
Mama Smith. Oh, go ahead.
Just one thing, Miss Cynthia, you hit the nail on the head, but there was one thing that you said that really triggered me. And I just want to say, for any young people, if you are in college and you are getting financial aid, if you don't take nothing else, do not take the extra financial aid money after your bills have been paid. I am going to speak from personal experience that is what the original STEMI was. But in the long run, honey, when you get your degree and you're paying it back, you're like, what did I spend that money on? So only take out what you need when it comes to financial aid.
And I just, go ahead, Rebecca.
I was gonna move to the next person who had a question, but go ahead, Chris.
I was just gonna tell Miss Cynthia I'm up for adoption. So if those kids don't want that house, I just go ahead and pass it this way. I'm gonna just go ahead and get I'm gonna remortgage it. We're gonna fix that bad boy up, and then I bless the kids and you, Miss Cynthia. I'm just saying.
All right, Christian, did you still have a question? I saw your hand raised.
Not really a question. Well, maybe it is a question because I've been kind of trying to work on my credit. I didn't know what credit was until I got in my 30s. And now I'm in my 30s and I'm trying to fix it. But I have teenage children that are 15 and 16. And I've been trying to find credit literacy classes that they can take for them to be very aware of what credit is before they even get out of my home. So I was just trying to get maybe some suggestions about those type of things.
Chris, if you want to speak to this, I'm going to find a link and I'm going to drop it in the chat if you don't mind.
Yep. So one website offhand that I mentioned earlier is freeannualcreditreport.com, or maybe annualcreditreport.com. Chris is going to check me here and I'm going to check on my phone. But that's going to talk about the importance of your credit report. And it's also going to allow you, Christian, to pull your credit report and for you to look through it. That's the first thing. You can seek a third party in order to mitigate any credit issues that you may have. But as far as literacy, that website is going to tell you the importance of credit. Also, I know that the Federal Reserve has resources, and I'm going to pull up a website here and we're going to put it down in the chat for you. There's also a website called moneyexperience.com. That just gives you the fundamentals of finances. So it talks about the checking accounts, the savings accounts, those type of things in order for them to understand a little bit more. One thing I would say is share with your children, and maybe they see what's going on.
I share my experience and let them know, like, I'm going through a thing now and I'm trying to get a home, and that's just renting a home at this point. And like I said, I knew nothing of credit. And so now I'm at the age and I want to have nice things, and I'm bumping into these roadblocks and no one's looking at the credit as a whole. They're just looking at the number. They don't care what's on there. I mean, I thought forever I was okay because I had no evictions on. Oh, I don't have evictions. I'm fine. I can go where I want to go. Never thought about credit to the extent of this. Before I knew about credit, but it was like, okay, I don't have credit. I'll just pay cash for whatever I want. Well,
yeah. Christian, I also want to get away from, yes, the credit score is important, but what I want you to know is that someone who has filed bankruptcy is going to have a high credit score. So we also need to think about what is in the report, what are in the details of it. And also, if you're rebounding and you get you a credit card, keep that credit card. Maybe you make a purchase or two and immediately pay it off. Those are little bitty wins that you can shoot for that will start to reestablish that credit. Not only, we're not looking at like evictions, things like that. Yeah, those are the derogatory things we don't want on there, but you actually want to build your credit. I see the Money Smart Kansas City, that's the Federal Reserve's link. Thank you for putting that into the chat. And then Chris, I don't know if you had anything else to add.
Definitely. So I just want to say shout out to you for trying to get the kids to be credit savvy. And one of the things that you can do, and I just want to use the airplane analogy where they say if the if the oxygen starts to mess up, save yourself before you save somebody else. Take care of the credit, learn it as you continue to learn and do your thing like you're doing, and kudos to you again. And then with your children, as you're continuing to build your credit, you can actually add them on under your credit card. That way you can begin to monitor how they spend, and you can put limitations on it to develop that discipline. My friend who has 2 daughters, I can't remember the age, but it has to be, I think 13. Jada and Janai, I guess 13 and younger, they have credit cards in their name. The parents are responsible for, but they're gonna turn 18 with like a 900 credit score. His is already 800, but I mean, I don't know if you can literally get to 9, but they're literally going to have amazing credit and they'll be able to do so many different things. So 15 is not too young. I don't want you to think that. And once you click on all of these links, because I don't know if you see the chat pulled up, but they have a lot of information for you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. And then YouTube, for now, if you can't get them in because of COVID or whatnot, YouTube some people and look at credit repair, credit secrets, because they do give a lot of jewels. And especially because that's kind of one of the ways of learning right now, being on YouTube. I think they would be able to benefit from that as well.
Thank you, guys.
We have another thing in the chat, another thing in the chat that also suggests Dave Ramsey. He has a course for high schoolers specifically, and it's called Foundations in Personal Finance, High School Edition. So, and your kids are high school age kids, and it's a self-directed curriculum that's online. And so that is another resource for those out there who may have, teens in the home and they want to provide that financial literacy educational opportunity.
Okay.
So before you wrap it up, I did want to say, just as a personal practice, and we really haven't mentioned that, but give to God what belongs to Him first. Give Him the 10%. Faith is definitely a matter. It's faith and finances. So we got to put that in there. That we got to give to God what is due to Him, so that He will, be a foundation in blessing us further. So I definitely want to throw that in there.
You could do more with 90% than you could do with 100.
Right. Right. That's all. That's all.
Well, man, I just want to thank y'all for coming out tonight. Facebook land, Zoom. Let's give our speakers some hand tonight. Y'all really dropped a lot of jewels. I took some notes here. And just real quick, do you guys have any like socials they can follow you on? If you want to, for business purposes, I know some of y'all got socials. Like if y'all would be personal, like if you like just like social media, if they like to follow you on for more advice or get in contact with you if they want to buy a home or those type of things.
Sure, my handle is The Wedding Diva on all platforms.
My name is Christopher Aaron. I am on Facebook. And even though I'm in Florida, if you guys, wherever you are stretched out across the world, if you need help with a home, I can help you to get a realtor. And I definitely don't mind offering my assistance. So Christopher, last name is Arrone. Christopher Arrone is actually just Aaron.
And if you're looking for a church home, St. Matthew AME Zion Church would love to have you as a member of this church. We thank God for this Young Adult Week. And we have some great leaders here, so we would love to have you as a member here.
All right. Well, like I said, thank y'all for coming out. Enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you for our speakers again. And this has been Financial Literacy and Black Ownership of Class panel for our young adult. So y'all have a good night.
Thank you for the opportunity. Good night.
Thank you.
Night.
Night.